The billionaire froze the instant she stepped into the quiet executive lounge and saw her daughter asleep against a stranger's shoulder. 12-year-old Colette Ashbourne had refused to sit beside unfamiliar adults for years, yet there she was, completely relaxed, one hand curled around the sleeve of a man wearing a faded maintenance uniform. The stranger was a single father named Everett Calloway, a janitor most executives barely noticed. But as he carefully adjusted the blanket around Colette, his sleeve moved, revealing an old tattoo on his upper arm, a small military emblem surrounded by faded coordinates. The billionaire recognized the symbol from a security briefing and suddenly understood that the quiet man she had trusted around her daughter was not merely a janitor. He was a former Navy SEAL who had survived missions he never talked about. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change a person's life, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can continue sharing emotional journeys about people whose greatest strength is often hidden beneath ordinary appearances. Genevieve Ashbourne was a woman who had built her fortune by refusing to give up. At 43, she controlled an international technology company and had become one of the wealthiest women in the country. Her offices occupied several floors of a polished glass tower, and her schedule was organized down to the minute. Every meeting had a purpose. Every expense had a reason. Every person around her seemed to understand that she expected excellence. Genevieve had learned early that wealth did not protect people from disappointment, so she tried to protect herself by controlling everything she could. The one thing she could not control was the loneliness of her daughter. Colette was 12 years old and had become increasingly withdrawn after losing her father several years earlier. Her father had been a gentleman who loved taking her to museums, building model airplanes, and reading to her on rainy afternoons. After his death, Colette stopped asking for things. She stopped complaining. She stopped telling her mother when she was frightened. Genevieve initially thought her daughter was simply grieving, but the silence became a permanent part of her personality. She hired therapists. She hired tutors. She hired specialists. She created a private schedule filled with carefully planned activities. Yet Colette continued pulling away. Genevieve interpreted her daughter's withdrawal as a sign that she needed more protection. She increased security around the family. She stopped allowing Colette to walk anywhere alone. She made sure assistants accompanied her everywhere. She believed that if she could keep every danger away from her daughter, perhaps she could prevent another terrible loss. But Colette did not feel protected. She felt trapped. Then Everett Calloway entered their lives. Everett was 41 and worked as a maintenance employee in Genevieve's headquarters. He was divorced and raising his 8-year-old son, Finn, by himself. Everett's clothes were inexpensive but always clean. His work was demanding, and he rarely took breaks unless absolutely necessary. He had a quiet confidence that made people instinctively trust him, but he never seemed interested in attention. What nobody at the company knew was that Everett had once served as a Navy SEAL. He had spent years in the military, training for situations where fear had to be controlled and decisions had to be made quickly. He had learned navigation, emergency medicine, tactical planning, and the discipline required to remain calm when others were panicking. His service had also cost him dearly. Several men he had served beside never came home, and the memories followed him long after he left the military. Everett eventually decided that he wanted a different life. He wanted to be a father. His son Finn had been born shortly before Everett left active service, and after his marriage ended, Everett became the boy's primary caregiver. He could have taken lucrative security contracts, but most required travel. He chose a modest maintenance position instead because it allowed him to pick Finn up from school and attend medical appointments when necessary. He did not consider the job beneath him. It was simply the job that allowed him to be there. The first time Everett noticed Colette, she was sitting alone near a window in the company cafeteria. Her lunch was untouched. She was drawing a small airplane in a notebook. Everett was repairing a vending machine nearby. He noticed the drawing because it reminded him of the model airplanes he used to build with Finn. He did not approach her. Instead, he quietly fixed the machine and returned to his work. A few minutes later, Colette walked over and looked at the tools in his bag. Everett showed her how one of the small instruments worked. She smiled. It was a tiny moment, but it mattered. Over the following weeks, Colette began appearing wherever Everett was working. Sometimes she sat nearby while he repaired equipment. Sometimes she watched him organize tools. Sometimes she showed him drawings. Everett never asked why she was quiet. He never asked about her father. He never treated her like a fragile billionaire's daughter. He treated her like a normal child. That was what Colette needed. One afternoon, she became upset after receiving a poor grade on a school assignment. She sat in an empty conference room with tears in her eyes. Everett happened to be cleaning nearby. He did not tell her that grades did not matter. Instead, he helped her understand that one bad result did not define her ability. He told her through simple encouragement that mistakes were information. Colette began opening up. Not with long conversations. With small things. She showed him pictures. She asked about his son. She admitted that she missed her father. Everett understood grief well enough not to rush it. He never tried to replace the father she had lost. He simply became someone safe. Genevieve noticed the change. Colette began smiling again. She started asking to visit the office. She began telling her mother small stories about her day. Genevieve assumed one of the expensive specialists had finally reached her daughter. She had no idea Everett was responsible. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Genevieve finished a meeting earlier than expected and went looking for Colette. She found the girl in the executive lounge. Colette had fallen asleep. Her head rested against Everett's shoulder. Everett was sitting completely still because he did not want to wake her. A blanket covered Colette. Her hand was loosely holding the edge of Everett's sleeve. Genevieve stopped in the doorway. Her first reaction was fear. Her second was anger. Then Everett shifted slightly, and the sleeve of his uniform moved upward. Genevieve saw the tattoo. It was faded, almost invisible beneath years of wear, but she recognized the military symbol from a security briefing she had once received. It was associated with a special operations unit. She looked at Everett again. The quiet janitor was suddenly an entirely different person in her mind. Genevieve immediately ordered a background investigation. The report arrived later that afternoon. Everett Calloway had served as a Navy SEAL. His record included specialized training, multiple deployments, commendations, and assignments that remained partly classified. His service had ended honorably after an operation that had left several members of his unit dead. Genevieve stared at the report. She could not understand why a man with that background was working as a janitor. Then she read about his son. Finn had significant medical expenses. Everett had refused several jobs that would have paid far more because they required frequent travel. He had chosen fatherhood over money. Genevieve felt something inside her shift. She had spent years chasing wealth because she believed financial security could protect the people she loved. Everett had willingly given up wealth to be present for the person he loved. The contrast unsettled her. But Genevieve still confronted him. She asked why he had never mentioned his military service. Everett explained that he did not want anyone treating him differently. He had spent years being judged by his uniform and his abilities. After leaving the military, he wanted to become invisible. He wanted to be Everett. A father. A worker. A man trying to build a peaceful life. Genevieve asked why he had become so close to Colette. Everett explained that he had never intended for it to happen. He had simply noticed a lonely child. He knew what loneliness looked like. He knew what grief looked like. And he knew what happened when adults were so afraid of losing someone that they accidentally made that person afraid of living. Genevieve became silent. Because Everett had described her perfectly. She had been so terrified of losing Colette that she had slowly taught her daughter to fear the world. The real turning point came several weeks later. Colette and Finn were attending a daytime community event organized by Genevieve's foundation. Children were playing outside, families were eating lunch, and volunteers were running activities. A loud construction sound suddenly came from a nearby street. Colette froze. The sound reminded her of the medical emergency surrounding her father's death. Her breathing became shallow. Genevieve rushed toward her. But Everett arrived first. He did not grab Colette. He lowered himself to her level and calmly helped her focus on the things around her. He reminded her that she was safe and that she could take her time. His training helped him remain calm, but Genevieve realized something more important. Everett knew what fear felt like because he had lived with it himself. Colette slowly relaxed. Then she reached for her mother's hand. Genevieve took it. For the first time, she did not try to fix the moment. She simply stayed. That afternoon changed their relationship. Genevieve stopped treating Colette's fear as a weakness. She began asking what her daughter needed instead of deciding for her. She gave Colette small freedoms. She allowed her to make mistakes. She let her walk short distances with less supervision. She stopped interrupting when Colette struggled to express herself. And slowly, Colette began speaking more. Not because anyone forced her. Because she finally felt safe enough to use her own voice. Everett remained part of their lives. Genevieve eventually offered him a position with her foundation overseeing safety and emergency planning. Everett accepted, but only after making sure the role would allow him enough time for Finn. His experience proved invaluable. He created safety procedures for schools, community centers, and family programs. But he also helped Genevieve understand something no business consultant had ever taught her. People were not problems to be managed. They were lives to be understood. The foundation began supporting military families and single parents who struggled with childcare, medical expenses, and employment. Everett became a mentor to other veterans. Genevieve became personally involved. And Colette began helping children who were dealing with grief. One afternoon, Colette presented Genevieve with a drawing. It showed a little girl sitting beside a man with a small tattoo on his arm. Behind them stood a woman holding an umbrella. Genevieve asked why she was holding the umbrella. Colette explained that the umbrella represented protection. But then she added something that made Genevieve cry. The umbrella was not covering the girl. It was being held above everyone. Colette had finally understood that protection did not mean hiding from the world. It meant standing together when the storm came. Years passed. Colette became confident and independent. She developed a love for engineering and eventually designed accessible technology for children with disabilities. Finn grew into a thoughtful young man who admired his father's service but understood that his father was more than his military past. Everett remained humble. His old seal tattoo faded further with every passing year. Genevieve never forgot the first moment she saw it. At first, she had believed the tattoo represented danger. Later, she understood that it represented sacrifice. But the most important thing Everett had sacrificed was not his safety. It was his ambition. He had walked away from a career that could have made him wealthy because his son needed him. And Genevieve finally understood why that mattered. She had spent years building an empire so her daughter would never need anything. Everett had spent years making sure his son would never need to wonder whether his father would be there. Both were forms of love. Only one had required Genevieve to slow down and truly see another person. Before we reach the ending, leave a meaningful comment and tell us what lesson touched your heart most. Was it Everett's sacrifice, Colette's courage, or Genevieve's realization that protecting someone does not mean controlling their entire world? Your words may encourage someone who is struggling to let go of fear and choose trust. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because the billionaire had frozen when she first saw her daughter sleeping on a janitor's shoulder. She thought she had discovered something dangerous. Instead, she discovered something beautiful. Behind the faded uniform was a father. Behind the old tattoo was a former Navy SEAL. Behind the military history was a man carrying grief, sacrifice, and memories he rarely discussed. But beneath all of it was something even more powerful. Love. Everett had not needed billions to become a hero. He had not needed recognition. He had not even needed anyone to know what he had done before. He simply needed to be there when his son needed him, and he had been there for Colette when she needed someone too. And Genevieve finally learned that day that true wealth is not measured by the size of a bank account or the number of people who know your name. Sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who gives up everything that could make him powerful just to remain beside the person who needs him most. And sometimes, a faded tattoo on an ordinary man's arm is not a symbol of the battles he once fought. It is a reminder of the people he chose to protect. The most important battle of Everett's life was never written in a military record. It was the quiet, ordinary battle of helping two children believe that the world could still be a safe place. And he won it, one patient moment at a time.